Today we're going to make a really simple app that just changes the background color in Xcode. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up Xcode and we're going to create a new Xcode project. When it opens up, I'm going to pick a single view app, go to next, and I'm going to give it a name. And I'm just going to call it background color change. And I don't need to use core data. This is going to be a real simple app. I don't need to check these off. I'm just going to hit next. I like to save mine in a folder on my desktop, but you can save yours wherever you want. Just save it someplace where you can find it again. And then you create that project. Opens up, you'll see it. When Xcode opens up, you'll see a screen that looks like this. It's just the general information about your app. It includes a bundle identifier, which is unique for each app that you create, and it's the way that Apple keeps track of these different apps. Okay, so we are going to start by going into the main storyboard. So if you click main storyboard over here on the project navigator pane, it'll take you to a screen that looks like an iPhone. And on this screen you can place different elements or objects. This is the editor pane right here. On the far right over here we have the inspector pane where you can get information about different elements that you're placing in here. You can toggle these different panes. The bottom left down here is going to be the debugger, so if you're getting error codes, things like that will show up here. And down at the bottom on the right is the console pane. So if you have an error in your Xcode and you say print the value of a variable or something like that, that print statement will appear down here in the console. So just give you a really brief tour of Xcode. So we have the navigator pane, the editor pane, and the inspector pane over on the right side. So what we're going to do next is we're going to open up the object library. The object library will be up here. If you hover over it, it says library, so that's helpful. We're going to open up that, and we're going to put in a label. And you can just grab it and drag it onto the main storyboard wherever you want it. We're also going to put in a button. So now we have our label and our button inside of our storyboard. One more pane that I didn't talk about is the view controller scene. Right up here. You can toggle this with a button down at the bottom of the storyboard, but this view controller screen is useful when you're working with the storyboard. Let's click on view controller, and then let's go over here and click on the identity, so you can see that this class is a view controller. Every app needs at least one view controller. And that will come built into the app when you start Xcode. You can always add other view controllers or different views, but you're always going to start an app with one. So we have our label and we have our button. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect those to the view controller Swift file. So we want the storyboard and the view controller Swift file to be open at the same time. So if we have the main storyboard open and we go up top to this the bar at the top, we're going to click these two circles up here. This is the assistant editor. So here we're able to have our storyboard open and our view controller Swift file open at the same time. I'm going to close the view controller scene just so it's a little bit easier to see. And I am going to control click and drag the label from the storyboard, and I'm going to drag it into the view controller Swift file. And I'm going to give this this is going to be an outlet for my label. I'm going to give it a name. I'll call it color label. And when I'm labeling objects like this, I'm going to do it in camel case, meaning that the first letter is going to be lowercase, but then in the second word, when I do color label, I'm going to capitalize the L in label. It's just a good practice to get in the habit of with programming. It's going to be a UI label. The connection is going to be the weak, and you don't have to worry about that right now, but we're just going to connect that to our view controller Swift file. And let's connect the button as well. So again, we're going to click on Control, click on the button, and drag it into the view controller Swift file. I put the label, the outlet, up above the view did load, but I'm going to put the button as an action, and I'm going to put it down below this function called view did load. So again, I put the label above, and I'm going to put the button below. I'm going to control click and drag that button over here. This is going to be an action. It's an object on the view controller. I'm going to call this button clicked. Again, I'm using camel case, so the first letter is going to be lowercase, and then when I get to clicked, I'll do an uppercase one. I'm going to change this type to a UI button, and touch up inside is just like the normal when you touch the button you want something to happen, so I'm going to leave that the same, and I'm going to connect that from the storyboard to the view controller Swift file. Alright, so now we're going to adjust some of the properties of the label. So if we click on the label and go over here to the inspector pane, and we're going to go this looks like a shield almost. It's the attributes inspector, and down here we can change like the font, the color, things like that. I want this label to be a little bit larger, so I'm going to start clicking here. I am going to pick custom. I'm going to pick a different font, and I'll do this one. I like that one. And I'm going to make it larger, so just up the size. I'm going to stay on 30, and I'm going to see how that looks. I'm going to call this color change. So the text inside the label I'm going to change to say color change. I want to recenter it. Alright, that looks okay. And we can do the same for the button as well. If you're in the attributes inspector, you can adjust the text color. We can adjust the size as well. I think I'm going to say, instead of button, I'm going to say click here. And let's make that a little bit larger. Maybe I'll go 30 as well. Alright, one more thing I think I'm going to change is the background color. Right now it's on default, which is like transparent, but I'm going to change it to white. Alright. I think I like how that looks. So now what we want to happen is when this button is clicked, we want to change the background color. So where we connected this button over here, you can see an IB action function button clicked, and then these curly brackets, and this is where you're going to put the code. When this button is clicked, what do you want to happen? You're going to put it in here. So this is where we're going to put the code right down here, and we're going to say view dot background color, and we're going to do one equal sign. So one equal sign is like assigning a value, whereas if you want to check like the value, if you want to see if something's equal to something else, then you do two equal sign. But we're doing one equal sign. We're assigning value, and what we want is we want to change that to a different UI color. So I'm going to say UI color dot maybe blue. All right. So when this button is clicked, we're hoping that the background changes blue. So let's go up here. I'm going to pick to do this on an iPhone 8. And that's going to be the simulator that I'm going to use. And when I hit play, it's going to load this app that I just created onto the simulator. So I can check it and test it to see how it works. Alright, you can see our app loaded on the simulator, and when I click the button changes white because we changed that in the attributes inspector, but the background changes to blue, just like the code we wrote in our program. So far it's working just the way we want it to. I'm going to hit this stop button up here to stop the simulator. And we're going to take a look at our code. So what I want is I want to be able to scroll through a few different colors and just cycle through those colors so I don't just get stuck on blue. So if you wanted to cycle through a number of different colors, do you have an idea about how you might program that? If you're watching this as a video, you might want to pause it for a second, think about how you might program that. And then when you're ready, you can hit play again and see if we're going to do it the same way. Alright, I hope you have some ideas about how you might scroll through different colors and keep track of that. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to create a variable called counter, and I'm going to just keep track of like a number as we go through different screens, and then I'm going to reset that number so it'll continue scrolling through different colors. That's the way I'm going to do it. When I'm creating a variable, I'm going to put it up here above view.did_load. If I was writing a function, I usually put it below view.did_load. This rule is usually going to be accurate. You put the variables above and you put the functions down below. So this variable is going to be called counter. So to create a variable, you write var, V-A-R, just stands for variable, counter, and I'm going to assign that the value of 0. And that is automatically going to be an integer. And you can check that by holding down Option and clicking on that variable right there, and it will tell us that it's an int. It's a good way to check your code. I'll show you one more time. You hold down Option, it'll come up with a question mark, and you can click on that and it will tell you what that variable is, and ours is an int, which is what we want. And we are going to write some if statements. If counter is equal to 0, and I'm going to cut this code that we use to change the background to blue, and I'm just going to paste it in here. So if the counter is equal to 0 and we hit the button, then the background will change to blue. I'm going to add an else if, counter is equal to 1. And if you notice when I'm doing these equal signs, I'm doing two equal signs. So that means I'm not assigning counter value of 1. What I'm doing is I'm checking to see if the counter is equal to 1. And I need some curly brackets. You see this error message popping up. It's just telling me it's expecting to see curly brackets, which it doesn't see yet. So if the counter is equal to 1, maybe we want to change to green. So view dot background color. You can see it autofills what I want, so I can just hit enter and type that in. I want the UI color to be green. There's a gray and there's a green, so you can see the autofill. I'm just going to go down to green and use the green color. Alright, we have if counter is equal to 0, we want it to be blue. If counter is equal to 1, we want it to be green. We have to increment the counter each time it goes through here. So I'm going down at the end of this curly bracket for if else. I'm going to go right down here. And I'm going to say counter is equal. Well, I'm saying equal, but what I'm really doing is I'm assigning a value because I'm using one equal sign. I'm going to say counter plus 1. So this will take the counter and it will assign it the counter plus 1. So it's just incrementing the value by 1. There's actually an easier way to write that. Do you guys know that easier way? The way you can increment in Xcode is you can just say plus equals. So counter plus equals 1, and that's going to increment the counter by 1. You can also do minus equals 1 if you want to decrease the counter by 1 each time it goes through. So that's just a little trick that you can make your coding a little bit more simple. Alright, let's run this and see how it is working. So I'm going to hit the play button at the top. It says build succeeded, so that's always a good sign. The simulator is opening up. Alright, let's click our button. Blue, green, green. Okay, so now it's stuck on green. Do you guys have some ideas about how we might be able to reset that counter? Or, yeah. What would you program next to reset the counter? If you want, you can pause the video and try to figure it out on your own. And then I'll give you the solution after you hit play. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to reset the counter. So what I'm going to do is, after I change it to green, I'm going to reset the counter to 0. So when we're assigning a value, we use one equal sign. The problem is if I just stopped there, I would set the counter to 0 and then I would add 1 to it again, so it would still stay green. So I want to type in one more thing here. I want to type in return. So what that's going to do is it's going to jump it out of this code for when the button is clicked. So it's not going to add that 1 on again. So it will scroll through both the colors. You can check it by hitting play. And it scrolls through both of our colors. If you wanted to, you could add extra colors by doing more else ifs to this. And I'm going to show you how you can create your own custom color. Alright, let's add a custom color to this. So I'm going to come to the end of this code and I'm going to type else if curly bracket. This is where I'm going to put my custom color in. just going to say if the counter is equal to 2, then we're going to do this code. View.background color is going to be equal to UI color dot init. Init is just a short way of saying initialize. And it will actually autofill this. So then we just have to put in the CG float numbers. So I am going to put in 0 for red, 0.2 for blue, green, 0 for blue, and I'll keep the alpha at 1. So this is one way that you can create a custom color. What I have to do is I have to take this counter reset, and I have to move it to this new code that we've done. So let's check that to see how our code is working. So I'm just going to run the simulator again. It said build succeeded. That's a good sign. So we have a green, excuse me, we have a blue, we have a green, and then we have a dark green. That's the custom color we created. And it will cycle through those colors. So that's one way that you can create a really simple app that just changes the background color. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you learned something. See you next time.